My issue is that when I study the universe, I don't see any necessity of a God or a personal God at that as well. And so, like, the example you showed, like, life doesn't come from non-life.
Right.
I don't think we totally have all the answers there yet because there have been recent scientific studies. Like, I just watched a TED Talk about it 2 years ago about these scientists in a lab. They put some chemicals together that were probably around when the Earth was in its young state and had this kind of primordial ooze. And they noticed that certain collections of these molecules would actually like feed off of energy and have very lifelike characteristics. Like in one set, they would like vibrate and like dance around and move around each other. Another one would actually seek out other little energy balls and like collect it and get bigger. And sometimes they would like form together and create a hybrid one that would replicate and dance around and do everything and have properties about all the other ones. So that's just an example of how I don't necessarily think we have all the answers as to, like, you can't just, like, say, oh, we don't know right now, so it must have been God or something. So I'm just, and you usually have, like, those 5 points you always go to, like, rational, come from irrational, morality and all that kind of stuff. So if you could just, like, help me find something in the universe that necessitates a God, that'd be great.
I am totally open to scientists taking matter, putting matter together in such a way that life is formed. It's exactly what I believe. An intelligent mind created matter, put it together in such a way that life was formed. So I have no problem with scientists in a lab creating life. But I would love to see a scientist with nothing, make something. I don't think that's possible. So, you have nothing, and suddenly you have something. I'm convinced that takes a creator. That takes some type of supernatural being to bring something out of nothing. And I am convinced also that it takes an intelligent mind to put matter together and energy together in such a way that you got life. The idea that that just happens by chance. There's no evidence to support that.
I mean, there is evidence. You can take just a certain amount of chemicals that would just happen to be laying around, and if they're collected together in such a way, and the universe is a huge superset, so like there's a bunch of possibilities that can happen. Like you can see that these things take on lifelike characteristics. So yeah, I would say it is possible. Maybe unlikely, but it is possible.
Yep. And it's possible that I could wake up in the morning with $1 million in my right pocket.
You could.
I could. But if I base my life on that, I would argue I'm being very stupid.
You would, but at the same time, you're not taking into account how massive the universe is. Like when you study probability, if you say that the works of if you do random letters, the works of Shakespeare is going to come up in the first 1,000 letters, you're kind of a fool. But one of the things about probability you understand is, given enough time, every works of Shakespeare will come up in the exact order that it was written.
Good. Okay.
And the universe, I believe, is huge enough, massive on a scale that it's hard to even like imagine that certain chemicals could just happen to come together and bring about lifelike properties.
But if you believe in the Big Bang, you know that the universe doesn't have eternity to produce life. You know that the universe came about 15 billion years ago. So you've got a limited amount of time, 15 billion years, for life to come about by chance. Now, if you and I and someone else are playing poker, and I'm dealing, and 10 times in a row, I deal a perfect hand to myself, if you begin to say, Cliff, I think you're cheating, that's impossible for you to deal 10 hands, all perfect for yourself. And if I say to you, there are multiple numbers of universes, and we just happen to live in the universe where I can deal 10 perfect hands of poker for myself, I think you'll, if you're a Texan, be reaching for your 6-shooter to blow me away for taking all your money away from you. I don't think you're going to say, oh yeah, right, there are a multiple number of universes, there's an infinite amount of time, so I buy the line that you can deal 10 perfect hands of poker cards to yourself in a row. I think you know that that is highly implausible, and what is far more plausible is, I'm cheating you out of your money.
No, and I agree. It is possible that you dealt yourself 10 perfect hands. I would never say that, oh, you dealt yourself 10 perfect hands. You were cheating, definitely, without a doubt. I would have some kind of investigation. I would probably check your sleeves and stuff like that and gather some more evidence. I'm not just going to, like, blindly accuse you. That would be unfair.
All right. Let's say I dealt 50 perfect hands of
Once
cards.
again, possible.
Really? How about 100?
Possible.
How about 200?
Possible.
Okay. I don't think you can live your life that way.
I try to.
You can't.
I try.
Prove to me that this fine university is going to give you a diploma on your day of graduation. Prove to me that on your day of graduation, this fine university is not going to say, hey, we're going to break tradition. No diplomas this year. Can you prove that?
I can't prove it. I have a pretty good idea of what they're going to do, though.
Good. You see, sir, you don't base your life on proof. You base your life on evidence.
I agree.
And you cannot get irrevocable, watertight proof. As a thinking human being, you base your life on evidence. That's what I do. I think that's what the majority of us do who treasure our minds. We're not so naive to think I can prove something. Rather, we look for evidence and then we ask ourselves, what is most plausible? What is most reasonable in light of the evidence? I can't prove God exists. I can't even prove I exist. Maybe I'm just a bad dream you're having. It is possible. But the overwhelming evidence is I do exist, and the overwhelming evidence is, in a different way, God exists. Not the proof, but the evidence.
Okay, so what is the evidence for God?
The evidence for God is design demands a designer. 100 times out of 100, in my experience of life, a delicious meal points to a chef. A shirt points to a tailor. Mount Rushmore does not point to water dripping down over rocks and carving out George and Teddy and Thomas's face. 100 times out of 100, the BMW points to a mechanic. The building points to an architect and a builder. Never in my observation do you get order and design by chance. It demands a designer. Second piece of evidence. The fact that if oxygen comprised 25% of this atmosphere, fires would erupt all over the place. If it comprised 15%, we'd all suffocate. The fact that it comprises 21%, which is exactly what allows us to sustain life, demands some type of intelligent mind. That type of precision, that we have a life-sustaining planet instead of a life-defeating planet, demands some type of intelligent mind. Thirdly, the amount of densely packed information in a single cell, the DNA of a single cell, demands some type of intelligent mind for me. If you and I are walking up and down the beach and we come to ripples in the sand, and you say, hey, Cliff, how'd those ripples get there? And I say, obviously because of the waves. That's cool. We keep walking down, we see in the sand, John loves Mary. You say, hey, Cliff, how'd that get there? And I say, obviously the waves. Why is that ridiculous? Because densely packed information in the message, John loves Mary, cannot come about as a result of the waves washing over the sand. It demands an intelligent mind. So there's more information in the DNA of a single cell than there's information in 3 sets of the 30-volume Encyclopedia Britannica. It points me to some type of intelligent mind. So those are 3 pieces of evidence that point to God. I could keep going, but why don't you speak now?
Okay, first I want to go ahead and about the one about the Earth being like a perfect place to habit life. We've found hundreds of planets in our galaxy, in a tiny little space in our galaxy, that have the same same type of atmosphere, same size planet, all that kind of stuff. We've found planets that have the same kind of properties that Earth has, Earth-like planets. Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's not that out of the ordinary for Earth to just pop up out of nowhere. Do you want to refute that, or?
Well, yeah. First of all, I'd love to find out about where these other planets are that are life-sustaining like Earth is. I'm just curious.
I'm not saying they're sustaining life. I'm saying they're life-like, or they're Earth-like. Like you're saying, like how there's 21% oxygen, a bunch of nitrogen, all that kind of stuff. We found planets that have that same kind of makeup.
But isn't it true that I would never want you to take your spacesuit off if you're on that planet?
I mean, if we study the atmosphere, we notice the atmosphere is like Earth. We could probably just take our helmets off. Be cool.
Really?
Yeah, that's why we say they're Earth-like planets. We can't get to them yet on this.
Where are these planets? Where are these planets?
They're in our galaxy, a very small sliver of our galaxy we've been able to study. We've found these planets.
All right. Great. That still doesn't change my point that when you study how life is balanced on a razor's edge on this planet, it demands an intelligent mind. I don't care how many planets there are out there that have similar. I would argue those planets have been created that way as well then, if they're life-sustaining. I mean, if you can go onto those planets and suck wind the way you do on here and live and have the whole life process continue on, it's incredible. Because please don't go to the moon and take your helmet off.
I will, I promise.
Good.
But I'm just saying, like you say, that the life balanced on a razor edge. Life as we know it, our carbon-based life forms, as we know it, as humans, as tigers and bugs and all that kind of stuff, they require this type of atmosphere. That doesn't mean other life can require some kind of extreme atmosphere.
I agree.
So why are you saying life balanced on a razor's edge when it could definitely be on a much wider range?
Well, the whole point is, your life and my life cannot be sustained on a planet where oxygen comprises 30% of the atmosphere. Fires would break out all over the place. We'd all burn to death. And if oxygen comprised 10% of our atmosphere, we'd all suffocate. So, I mean, it is so precise. I mean, think about Jupiter. The gravitational field of Jupiter sucks in all these comets and asteroids headed straight to smack planet Earth. It's an amazing vacuum cleaner, Jupiter is, and it protects us in an amazing way. Think about if the Earth spun more quickly on its axis. There wouldn't be life as we know it on this planet. So, I mean, the amazing balance of nature that sustains life, it demands some type of intelligent mind, doesn't it?
It sustains our life, but I mean, it doesn't require an intelligent mind. I'm just saying, what makes our life so special that it has to balance on that razor's edge?
All right. I have a brother who's a transplant surgeon. He transplants kidneys and livers down at Emory University Hospital, or over at Emory University Hospital in Atlanta. I can promise you, sir, he has gone through the most stringent academic courses in order to be able to transplant livers and kidneys. And if you need a liver transplant, I would encourage you not to go to someone who lives down on the drag to have them transplant. I would encourage you instead to turn to someone who has studied the amazing, intricate order and design of the human body and who can pull off that transplant in such a way that you're going to live instead of die of kidney or liver failure. Now, people love to say to me, oh, there's not that much order and design in the human body. You see, the reason that I almost feel like calling them either inconsistent or an intellectual hypocrite is because you know very, very well that if you get sick enough, you're not going down to someone on the drag for help. You're going to the most highly trained doctor you can possibly find who understands the order and design of your body and who can correct the disorder that has occurred. That's my point.
Okay, that doesn't tell me why our life is special, why it has to hang on that razor's edge. You're saying our life is complicated to understand for us. Do you think a worm understands how its heart beats?
What does that have to do with anything we've been talking about?
Okay, it could be very complex to us like we have to go to school for 10 plus years to understand how to do a liver transplant. How do we know there's not something else that just looks at us like, oh, hey, look, idiots trying to take out their liver again. And they can just do it as soon as they're born. And it's the same relative step from a worm to human to some other kind of life.
All right. If you have liver failure, I can promise you you're not going to look at me and say it's relative. If you have liver failure and if you're on your way out of here, you know very, very well that you need a new liver in order to live.
I agree.
And you're going to have a doctor do that transplant who has studied very carefully the order and design of the human body. You're not just going to let anybody mess with your liver, I hope.
I understand that, but I'm just saying maybe we're not as smart as we think we are.
Oh, I agree with that. We are definitely not as smart as we think we are. A bunch of us are intellectual, arrogant twits. There's no question about it. But, sir, you can't deny the fact that there is amazing, intricate order and design to the human body. And you prove that you realize that when you don't go to the person on the strip to heal you. You go to a hospital. You go to the most highly trained doctor you can possibly get. Why? Because this thing is intricate. Really intricate. All right. does intricate order and design come about by chance?
I don't think it's necessarily that complex, us. Like I'm saying, we could be the simplest, we could be very simple. Like, we only think it's complex, that's all we know. It's the most complex thing, or one of the most complex things we've been able to study. There's still so much we don't know about the universe. Like, we only know about 5% of what the universe is made of.
Uh-huh.
The other stuff is just blind. We have no idea what it is.
Right.
We call it dark energy, dark matter. Nothing to do with energy, man, nothing to do with matter. We just call it that because why not?
Okay.
So, the fact that we can only understand tiny little percentage of the universe, something we haven't even seen, we just think, like, hey, this is what 5% of the universe is probably made up of.
Right.
Lets me know that we may not know what we're talking about all the time.
Okay. Okay, now just listen to what you're saying. And now consider me answering your question, why do I believe God exists, by saying, we know so little of all there is to reality, God must exist. I cannot live my life that way.
I'm glad.
I cannot do what you're doing to me, which is, we know so little that we got to just say God doesn't exist, because we got to realize that science is eventually going to be able to answer all our questions. That, for me, is intellectual dishonesty. Yes, we agree. We don't know everything. We know less than 1% of all there is to know, I'm convinced. But we got to do the best job we can with the evidence we have. We've got to use not these genius minds we have, but these amazing minds to look for evidence and then to ask ourselves what is most reasonable, what is most plausible, not what can we prove, but what is most reasonable, what is most plausible in light of the evidence. Okay, so I think we've moved from atheism to agnosticism, right? Okay, now, here's my problem with agnosticism. It's impossible to live out. What does that mean? Tonight, you will put your head on your pillow, I'll put my head on my pillow. Like it or not, you're living for something, I'm living for something. In other words, we have motive, we have ambition, we have priorities, we have drives and desires. Okay, now all you got to do is take your motives, push them back to their origin, and you'll find out what you worship. In other words, what you consider ultimately worthy. If you consider money ultimately worthy, you will get the best education you have, very specifically to make the most money you can. If you value education as ultimately worthy, you will live for your rational mind to be the most brilliant postdoc student you can be, and professor or whatever. If you live for physical pleasure, if that's the bottom line for you, then you will be the classic hedonist, and you'll live to stimulate your nerve endings. But you see, my question is, what's the evidence that the ultimate purpose of life is to make money, to have pleasure, to be smart? Now, Jesus says the ultimate purpose in life is to love God with your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. And you can use money, and you can enjoy sex within the context of a lifelong commitment, and you are responsible to use your rational mind because it's a precious gift from God, so you better not dabble in the irrational. You better think hard and straight. And you see, that worldview makes so much more sense than the options. But the idea that you can go to sleep and say, well, I don't believe anything's worth living for, means that you will not get up tomorrow morning. Which is why Albert Camus, the great atheistic existentialist philosopher, pointed out, the only question modern man must answer is, why not commit suicide? In other words, why get up tomorrow morning if life is ultimately meaningless? But you see, obviously, you're going to create some meaning. All right, we all do, right? Or else we accept the fact that God created us for a purpose.